Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Top 10 edition of Magic Minds, proudly sponsored by our Patreon supporters and CoolStuffInc.com, where you can find cool stuff in stock every day. And check out our co-sponsor, Mana Traders, the best tool to enhance your Magic Online experience. Use the code MAGICMINDS for 12% off your next subscription with Mana Traders. I am Evan Irwin, and we get started each week by saying hello to my two co-hosts, Power Dragon.
How's it going? We're going to have some fun top 10s today.
That's right, complete with correct graphics. Reuben Bressler.
Good evening. I jumped the gun there, but it's great to see you guys and have another top 10 to talk about.
Oh, it's going to be exciting. We also get another choice, the top comment from last week in a segment we call Honorable Mention, where Reuben will tell us who was the most eloquent in letting us know what card we did not choose as one of our top 5 or top 10 Lord of the Rings cards. Reuben?
It has been a while since I've seen quite as robust of a comments section and reply oeuvre to our episode. That's right. I brought out the French for that. For any top 10. And maybe it's because we haven't done a top 10 for a minute. Maybe it's because people are super passionate about Lord of the Rings. But there were well over a dozen comments that were all worthy of this. There were well over 24 cards brought up. And they were all great, and I'm super thankful to the folks for commenting. I decided to go with the one that stuck out to me because I didn't see this one coming as like competitive angle cards. But I've seen some deck lists that have been using them. So Ken Palkey writes, "We've never had one generic mana land cycling spells in Magic. This gives us 5 Eagles of the North, Lorien Revealed, Troll of Khazad-dûm, Oliphant, and Generous Ent. The power level of these cards is off the charts. The ability to tutor dual lands, triomes, snow-covered basics, and basics at instant speed, dodging most counter magic is insane, and they're all common?"
Yeah, the generic, or the Generous Ent, just to choose one, is a 3 and 5 generic mana for a 5/7 common tree folk with reach. When it enters the battlefield, you make a food token, but that's not what we're here to talk about. It has forest cycling of 1 generic mana, which means 1 generic mana, discard it, search your library for a forest card, reveal it, and put it in your hand, then shuffle. So that is shocklands, dual lands, triomes, snows, all the good things, and this is already seeing like what modern play at this point?
And Legacy.
And of course it is.
I'm seeing Legacy play out of these. These are going and getting, real easy to get an Underground Sea off of a basic on turn 1 and putting a creature into your graveyard for a reanimate, or growing up your Tarmogoyfs or your Delirium, any of that kind of stuff. These kind of came out of nowhere for me, and I feel kind of stupid about it.
You shouldn't feel stupid about it. Like, I mean, is it something... because they're not particularly exciting, but they are good and important, you know?
Right.
Yeah. And
like, who knew that reanimate target Oliphant, or reanimate target Troll of Khazad-dûm, or instant speed discard a Lorien Revealed to get up to your Delirium was going to be... And it's also... That one's a blue one, so that one obviously goes with Force of Will as well.
Yeah.
That's an island that discards to Force of Will.
Which I will take all the time. So yeah, I mean, I like it when cards sneak up like that, where you're like, wait a minute, that was one of the most powerful cycles in the whole freaking set. So Thank you so much, Ken Palkey, for being a part of the show. Please contact us on Twitter DMs. No, I'm not calling it X. It's Twitter DMs. Get out of here. No one's going to give it to you. Cut it out. But yeah, Twitter DMs at MagicMindsCast, please, for your prize. Thanks.
X, where X is Twitter.
Yeah. Thanks again to CoolStuffInc.com for sponsoring this giveaway. And stay tuned for our top 10 list this week, and maybe you can win the next top 10's free gift certificate, because it's time to talk about Commander Masters. Now, I don't know about y'all, but I've got kind of a mix of old stuff and a little bit of new stuff in terms of my top 10.
I think mine only has 3 new things.
Okay.
I think most of mine are reprints that I have in my top 10.
I actually went half and half.
Yeah, I went closer to half and half. I think it's 6 and 4 or something like that. But let's go ahead and get started with our number 10. Reuben, what's your number 10?
My number 10 is a card that I love and is a very exciting reprint because it's also a downshift. One of the most fun things to do is to see what becomes legal in Pauper and what becomes legal in Peasant Commander and things like that when a new set comes out. And Commander Masters has some of the most exciting Pauper downshifts I think I've ever seen. Like, there's a bunch of cards that I'm looking at of like, that's gonna be a whole new archetype. But the card that's at my number 10 is a card that I absolutely love. Was a first pick when it was an uncommon in the constructed set that it was in. And something that you see very little of in Pauper, which is board wipes. You see very little in the way of get rid of all creatures. When I first started playing Pauper, the only one I could think of was like Evan Carr's Justice, right? Or you dump a bunch of mana into a Crypt Rats. And that was kind of it. But now we're getting some quality board wipes. And this one is one that I adore. My number 10 is Sulphurous Blast.
Ooh. All right.
So Sulphurous Blast originally was an uncommon in Time Spiral. It is an instant for 2 generic red. Sulphurous Blast deals 2 damage to each creature and each player. If you cast it during your main phase, it deals 3 damage to each creature and each player instead. I haven't kept up enough with the Pauper metagame to know how good this is going to be, but last time I played, pretty much everything was like, you had like green Stompy, you had like the black mid-rangey kind of decks. Everything had 3 toughness unless you were playing Tron or, you know, putting down a Mirror Enforcer or something. And at that point, you can target those things and put them away. Sulphurous Blast, being able to clear out all the elves, being able to clear out all the rats, I feel like that's going to be a good card.
Yeah. Super cool. I mean, it's just one of the effects you just don't get really at common that they're really starting to get more accustomed with. I mean, for example, like look at all the downshifts to uncommon for legends, like, and not just mythic to rare, but rare to uncommon. There's quite a few. All right, Power Dragon, what is your number 10?
Well, mine is almost counter to Reuben's, but I'm going with Heroic Intervention. I had a hard time picking what I wanted in the 10 slot. But this is a 2 mana, a green and colorless for an instant that permanents you control gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. Like this card, one, it was already getting pricey, so it definitely needed a reprint. And it's the type of card that almost every green deck wants in Commander for sure, but it does just work in multiple other formats. Like it's cheap, it's instant speed, like it's highly desirable right now. And it actually protects permanents, not even just creatures. That's the other thing. So it can protect planeswalkers, enchantments, whatever. It's just an all-around solid card that I don't know how many times we're going to see it reprinted because it's something they seem to be resistant to wanting to put into sets. So this might be the only place we even get it for the next couple of years.
I mean, they put it in the core set, right? Like they put it in core set 2021.
Once upon a time,
I think that's where it came out. And then
Aether Revolt is where it showed up.
Yeah. Aether Revolt's where we got it.
And it's a hell of a magic card. Don't get me wrong. It does a lot.
Yeah, I hope we get to see it in Standard again.
Yeah.
But
I wouldn't mind it.
Commander is where this thing really shines. That and Brawl. In particular, you very rarely expect counter spells out of other colors, and getting somebody when I play a Sulphurous Blast or when somebody plays a Casualties of War or something along those lines, and you're just like, I'm not gonna, that's not a thing you can do to me right now. Feels really good with Heroic Intervention for sure.
Yeah, it's one of those things that I don't think they can make this effect all it does for all of your stuff and all the hexproof, and I don't think they're ever going to make it any cheaper than this. Like this is
it.
This is the watermark,
and at instant speed.
Yeah, they couldn't make it like sorcery for some weird reason or whatever. But regardless, let's move on to my number 10. So my number 10 is a brand new card, so I can start off with our brand new cards. I think this is sweet. There's a real difficulty in trying to figure out, in my opinion, cool red spells. What do red spells do? What makes red spells interesting? And how can we make them new and different and exciting and kind of wild and zany and kind of what they get at? But I was very excited, and it's definitely pricey, on reading Guff Rewrites History. This is a red and 2 generic mana rare instant. For each player, choose target non-enchantment, non-land permanent that player controls. Here we go. Those permanents' owners shuffle them into their libraries. Each player who controlled one of those permanents exiles cards from the top of their library until they exile a non-land card, then puts the rest on the bottom of their library in a random order. Each player may cast a non-land card they exile without paying its mana cost, so it's wacky, wild, combo-y, answers whatever crap you're dealing with at the time. It just does kind of everything for just 3 mana.
I ain't reading all that.
I'm happy for you.
I'm happy for you, though, or I'm sorry.
Honestly, that's the type of effect people like playing with red in Commander, though.
Yeah.
Like this is a fun card that I think a lot of people are going to really enjoy.
Yeah.
This is Chaos Warp, but multiple targets, right?
Basically, yeah.
And can't target lands, I guess.
Right. And the same cost.
Yeah, that seems great.
Like these four
And
things
Guff
I
is
hate the
just
most.
such a goof.
Right?
Yeah.
Or the thing that you've enchanted with something that's turned mine off. I can shuffle it back and we get 4 new things. Whee!
Right. Or my mana rock that I don't need anymore to try to, re-roll into something new and neat.
Turn it into a monster.
Yeah.
Sounds like fun. So moving here to number 9. Reuben, what's your number 9?
My number 9 is the only higher that is on someone else's list.
All right. Power Dragon, what is your number 9?
I have the medallions as a group. They're all 2-mana artifacts that just make their appropriate color cheaper.
But aren't those higher on somebody else's list?
Are they? Oh, yeah, I guess they
higher.
are. Oh, yeah, okay. We'll pass on those then.
It's okay. We'll get back to them here shortly. Well, my number 9 is a reprint. And it's one of those cards. It's just one of those stupid cards, right? Where you're like, every year, sometimes it'll feel like every couple months, it would just like start to go up and up and up. And it was printed, it was printed in 2015, in Commander 2015. And they just didn't reprint it. And they just kept on. It turned into like $40, $50, $60 card. Even with this reprint, it's just barely under $50. A $40 version in Commander Masters for Arachnogenesis. This card is sweet. It's a green and 2 generic mana for a rare instant that puts X 1/2 green spider creature tokens with reach onto the battlefield, where X is the number of creatures attacking you. Prevent all combat damage that would be dealt this turn by non-spider creatures. Make a giant board. Stop all of their nonsense. 3 mana. Every spider deck wants it, and it turns out there's a lot of spider decks. They made a lot of really cool legendary spiders over the last couple of years, and this damn thing just got to be really crazy expensive.
Yeah. I mean, anything that produces tokens typically gets popular. Anything because of effects like Doubling Season and Anointed Procession, anything that is instant speed that does that also gets popular. Call the Copper Coats comes to mind as another one where, it's an instant speed, make a bunch of tokens kind of card. This one also saves you from an entire combat step. Which is insane. Like, this is just such a blowout. It reminds me a lot of, I think it's called Ink Shield.
Yeah. The black-white one?
The black-white one, which is very similar to this, but this one's monocolored and costs 4 instead of 5. So it'll still blow you out. I'm sorry? It costs 3? This card's insane.
It's like Turbo Fog, really. Like, your opponent attacks, like, you get a pile of spiders, and then you can decide to block or not, or whatever, and sometimes just win the next turn if you have the right setup.
Yeah.
This card's insane.
Yeah. Play Arachnogenesis, survive. Your opponent doesn't want to attack you anymore because you've got 15 1/2s now. On your turn, you untap and Crater Hoof or Endray's Forerunners or literally anything. Gaia's Anthem.
There you go. So let's move on here to number 8. Reuben, what's number 8?
My number 8 is a green card that also goes into that lovely Arachnogenesis deck. And it's another of these cards that we've been saying needs a reprint for a long time now. I think the cheapest versions online look to be going for about $24, originally part of a cycle, but you don't need to reprint the entire cycle. All you really need is to reprint Finale of Devastation. Thank you for finally doing so. Originally from War of the Spark, Finale of Devastation is X green green. Search your library and or graveyard for a creature card with mana value X or less and put it onto the battlefield. If you search your library in this way, shuffle. If X is 10 or more, creatures you control get +X and gain haste until the end of the turn. Very good with Nykthos, very good with Gaia's Cradle, very good with Elves. Going to go get a Craterhoof Behemoth, as previously mentioned, is a very common play line with Finale of Devastation. But also just go and get your elf that you don't have in your opening hand, or Dryad of Elysian Grove to make sure that your hand keeps churning, things like that.
I like that card a lot. I'm a big fan of it. Just feels like over the last 6 or 7 months, it started just going up in value as more people discovered more things to do with it. So it's cool to see it get included in a set.
Yeah, I mean, War of the Spark was nuts. War of the Spark was a very, very powerful, very, very pushed set. This was in 2019. This was just before I don't know if they were 100% into the fire design, quote unquote, at that point, but drafting War of the Spark felt very cube-like. It had some of the best removal they'd ever made, some of the swingiest, craziest rares. Stuff like this was huge. And once we got to Eldraine that fall, it was like, oh my God, what is going on with Magic? Because everything is just exploding and crazy and super powered.
We had some wild decks for a minute there in standard. Stuff was off the page.
It was nuts, and that was definitely one of them. So let's move on here to number 8 from Power Dragon. What you got?
My number 8 is a very old school one that people like, but Personal Tutor. Just all of 1 blue to go search for a sorcery. And I know people look at that and think like, oh, why searching for a sorcery? Why does that matter? But in a format like Commander, there are a ton of sorceries that you actually want, and this card is fantastic. And it hadn't really been reprinted since Portal, I believe.
Portal.
So it's like the only actual paper printing. So yeah, and it was actually getting way up there. This was over $40 in a lot of places if you wanted one. So this is a card I think was desperately needing a reprint. Now, because it's only 1 mana, it can have some uses in some of the older formats, though generally those are going to be things that want to go search for instants a lot of the times. But yeah, this card, very good all around, and cool to see that this one got included in the set.
Still a $25 card. I mean, you know,
Oh,
Yeah.
finding a sorcery
All
is
of
still
those-
great.
All of those Portal reprints, they get weird, right? Because Personal Tutor was one of it was expensive, mostly because it hadn't been reprinted.
Yeah, because of age.
Right.
Because of age, yeah. And, you know, you saw what happened to Imperial Recruiter, that went from $200 to
Oh, and the
$6.
Black Tutor that came out in the last core set or whatever that was.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like Grim Tutor.
Grim
yeah.
Tutor, yeah. And so Personal Tutor
Um,
was printed 26 years ago.
Right.
So that's
So I
That's
you know, card's very good, but you're going to be able to get affordable copies now.
Oh,
which I think
very
is
much so.
huge.
I wouldn't be surprised if you can pick these up somewhere around the $12 range when it's all said and done.
and that's the best part of this set, just as a quick aside, in that while there is definitely some gnashing of teeth over sealed prices, this is going to bring all the singles prices down for every single card you're interested in the set. Will be cheaper
And-
because it's in here.
The reflavoring of the art for Personal Tutor, they did a great job with the
Yeah.
reprints of reflavoring a lot of the cards. My personal favorite is reflavoring Bribery to be on New Capenna, but reflavoring Personal Tutor to go to Archivos, aka the plane where Strixhaven is, also a home run out of the park.
There you go. So my number 8, my number 7 are both higher. So we're going to move on to number 7 from Reuben. What do you got?
So my number 7 is near and dear to my heart because way back in 2018, there was a Grand Prix Las Vegas, and at Grand Prix Las Vegas, we did a live Dungeons and Dragons show, live Dungeons and Dragons game, where I DM'd and lots of people from the Magic community were characters of the Weatherlight, and I called the adventure Board the Weatherlight. And for those of you who didn't see it, spoiler alert, it had to do with the Riptide Project, because at the time they didn't really explore slivers in Dominaria, which was coming out. And I wanted to explore slivers in this new age. And they had found some notes from one of the people or they had met one of the people. They hadn't just found some notes. They met a sliver disguised as a biologist. And that biologist's name, ladies and gentlemen, Evan, do you know how to pronounce this one?
No.
Rukarumel, I think, is what it was.
Rukarumel. All right, I'll go
Sure.
with that.
You
That
got
sounds good.
Rukarumel biologist. Rukarumel biologist is from the Riptide Project. Costs Wooburg for a legendary creature, human wizard, and is a 3/3 and comes in the Slivers Commander deck. And does something very weird. As Rukarumel biologist enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Slivers you control and non-token creatures you control are the chosen type in addition to their other creature types. The same is true for creature spells you control and creature cards you own that aren't on the battlefield. Then you can pay 3 generic and tap it to make a 1/1 colorless sliver creature token. The Riptide Project was a horrific idea and shows what happened. It was sort of like our Jurassic Park. It was like Magic's Jurassic Park of like, they didn't stop to think if they should. But this card lets you do some really interesting combos and like do some really fun ways to infinite combo and win the game. One that I saw was Angel of Glory's Rise can turn itself into a human
Oh,
in order to repeatedly bring itself back, so you can sacrifice it to a Phyrexian altar or something like that. There's a weird one where it's like if a non-token pirate comes into play, you get a treasure token, I think, and then you can continually get token triggers or something that I didn't really pay attention
an
to the
infinite
full
combo in Commander, am I right? Like, that's just
Sure.
it's like a newborn baby.
But like turn all of your slivers into dwarves and then to get a Magda into play, right? Like this is the kind of stuff that we can do with Rukan Rumel. Really interesting to be able to staple this kind of effect onto a Wooburg commander.
Yeah, I mean, this thing is pre-ordering for like $30. So like,
oh, okay,
it's definitely very exciting. People are
it's the hotness
all about it. So Power Dragon, what's number 7?
All right, this one's a new card. This is one of the new ones that made my list, but it's Narcy Fable Singer, and I'm gonna have to read a lot on this card, but it's a colorless white, black, green for a legendary human bard that happens to be mythic. It is a 3/3 and has lifelink and a whole lot of fun text. So whenever you sacrifice an enchantment, you get to draw a card. Whenever the final chapter ability of a saga you control resolves, each opponent loses X life and you gain X life, where X is that saga's mana value. There's a lot going on with this card for 4 mana. I mean, it's a reasonable sized body as a 3/3. Lifelink is fantastic. You get to, whenever Saga's just sacrifice, you get to draw, but then you're also draining life from your opponent. And this already slots well into several decks that people are playing. I mean, we already had recently like Tom Bombadil decks that people are starting to play. You know, we have several enchantment-based decks that could easily pivot and fit this in. So I would not be surprised to see this card be sought after by a lot of different Commander players.
Yeah,
another $25+ pre-order at the
I've been playing a decent amount of Tom Bombadil Brawl, and one of the big issues is you're just too slow. Like you just don't have time. And something that would really help is a little bit more of that life buffer. And Narcy does that. Narcy lets you play your Elspeth's Nightmare on turn 3, play Narcy on turn 4. Next turn you're going to gain the 3 life, right? You get your value out of all of that stuff that usually only has one chapter you really care about, like Binding of the Old Gods or the Weatherseed Treaty, any of that kind of stuff. Much less if you're able to get full value out of the big ones, like Elspeth Conquers Death. And also is a 3-color Saga's Commander, not a 5-color Saga's Commander, which is cool. It lets you have some more design space. It lets you do something else. So very cool card. I love it.
Very nice. All right, so let's move on here to number 6. I can finally be a part of the cast again. This is a reprint. This is... I don't really know even where to go with this at this point. This card is so seminal. Like, could easily have been number 1 if I wanted it to be type thing. This card, I don't know if they've made... Like, just looking back, and it's weird to think about this... But it is incredibly wild to me that in 2005, they made what is arguably the best Commander card of all time. And it's Doubling Season. And it's a $70 freaking pre-ordering for $62.50 right now. Doubling Season is very straightforward and wonderful. And I wish I had caught on to it years and years ago. For a green and 4 generic mana, it's a rare enchantment that says if an effect would create 1 or more tokens under your control, it makes twice that many. If an effect would put 1 or more counters on a permanent you control, you put twice that many. That means Planeswalkers enter with twice as many loyalty counters, and so on. Every +1/+1 counter becomes 2, and so on. You double your double, and you can't not love Doubling Season, and Doubling Season is just going to be $60-something plus until the end of time.
Yeah, I was literally about to say the same thing. Like, it gets reprinted, the price drops like $15. It spends 2 years getting back over like $65-70, and we just do it all over again.
Yeah. Well, as long as they keep printing cards that make tokens and have +1/+1 counters on them, you're going to want this for your Commander deck. And they just came out with like make a bunch of food tokens and, you know, put a bunch of +1/+1 counters on things. Man, Farmer Cotton's a card that would be good.
And I'm guilty. One of my favorite Commander decks puts a bunch of +1/+1 counters on things, and I play Doubling Season, so I'm just as guilty as everybody else.
Of course,
and
you do.
Not to mention, you play a bunch of Planeswalkers.
Yep.
You play a bunch. You can play this card. It's like Atraxa because it's you would play this in an Atraxa deck. But what I mean is, you can build Atraxa to be Planeswalkers. You can build Atraxa to be +1/+1 counters. You can build it to be charge counters. You can build it to be whatever. Doubling Season goes in all of those and all of the token decks.
Yep.
So it goes everywhere. It's one green mana of its 5. It's easy to cast. It's a great card.
You can't have too many of them, basically. So there you go. Reuben, what's number 6?
My number 6 is another Pauper downprint. Again, I'm not super up on the Pauper metagame, but I have a hard time believing that All That Glitters isn't gonna instantly be a deck in Pauper. They put All That Glitters is playable in like Modern.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
As like a centerpiece. So All That Glitters is generic into white for an enchantment aura. The enchanted creature gets +1/+1 for each artifact and or enchantment you control, originally an uncommon from Throne of Eldraine.
Mm-hmm.
What a card. And what a thing to put into Pauper. I think that we have at least a few free artifact creatures. I think
Memnite, so on.
Well, I don't know that Memnite's common.
Actually,
is it?
I don't know if it's common.
Ornithopter might be common. I don't know that they're. We certainly have a million.
There's a bunch of
one-mana
affinity. There's
ones.
frostbites. and
There's
stuff.
a million, and Affinity's already a playable archetype, and
Memnite is
I don't
not
know that
common.
Auras is already a playable archetype, but certainly could be. This thing gets enormous immediately, and with the lessened power level of the format, putting something like this in there just makes it the new Predator.
It's very nice. I like it. Power Dragon. What's number 6?
My number 6 is one that was been waiting a full reprint, and that's Loyal Retainers. It's 2 colorless and a white for a 1/1. You can sacrifice it and return a legendary creature from your graveyard to the battlefield. And honestly, this card, I don't know how well it's going to hold its value, but it's definitely one that's been sought after because each time it's been reprinted, it's been like as a promo or like an invocation or whatever, but we haven't had it in an actual set in forever. So this would be an interesting one to see kind of how this card behaves, but this is a great card in almost every commander deck, right? Like just anything that dies, you can get it right back. You can set it up to even do little mini combos with it. Like there's some fun stuff you can do with this card, but a lot of people avoided it because of the cost. And now you actually be able to just open it in a booster pack. So I don't know if we'll get tired of seeing this card, if it becomes a staple in a bunch of decks or what's going on. But yeah, it's just a fun all around card to finally get a real reprint.
I mean, the fact that it was reprinted it was printed in Portal, reprinted in Commander's Arsenal, and then it was like an invocation, a play promo, and then here it is as a Mythic, still pre-order for like $35. I mean, like it seems like a good money card for the set, and very exciting card all in all. So
there was a little period there where Loyal Retainers was extremely powerful in Legacy because if you recall, Survival of the Fittest was a deck, and you could discard like an Iona and just play Loyal Retainers the next turn. And that was a pretty popular thing that you could do for about half a second before they were like, this card shouldn't be in Legacy.
Yeah, that's pretty gross.
Yeah, this card's really dumb and does broken stuff. So, okay. Let's move on here to our number 5. Reuben, what you got?
My number 5 tells is a saga that tells a story we haven't seen told on a saga yet. And it is about a story where we haven't gotten sagas from the plane of Innistrad much. Even though Innistrad is a much beloved plane with much beloved characters and much beloved storylines, we haven't really had the stories told on sagas. And finally, we get to have the Battle of the Hell Vault appear on a Magic card in a way that is both powerful and extremely in line with what the actual story is. Battle at the Hell Vault is 4 generic white for a saga. Chapters 1 and 2. For each player, exile up to 1 target non-saga, non-land permanent that player controls until Battle at the Hell Vault leaves the battlefield. And Chapter 3 says create Avacyn, a legendary 8/8 white angel creature token with flying, vigilance, and indestructible. And if we can, I'd love to put that Avacyn token up onto the screen because I love the stained glass aesthetic that we get in Innistrad with that sort of the sun going down and the October sky kind of situation happening with the colors. Battle at the Hell Vault tells a very important story in the Dark Ascension in original Innistrad storyline with her trapping herself in that object and then the final showdown that brought her back out.
This was my number 7, and I think it's brilliant, and I am afraid of how expensive that token is going to be.
Yeah.
That token is dope. Avison herself is like 45 to 50 bucks pretty much every time she gets reprinted. It doesn't matter. It goes right back up to those levels. This is the only way you can make this token is through this card. So this card is expected to be fairly pricey, but I'm telling you that token is going to be very, very expensive.
Yeah.
So,
and being able to blink stuff with your
Brilliant.
Battle of the Hell Vault, also really important.
Brilliant.
So.
I love the flavor. I love the story. I love the token. It's great. Power Dragon. What's number 5?
Number 5, I've got Vindictive Lich. It's a 3 colorless and a black for a 4/1 zombie wizard. And it has some really cool abilities here. Whenever it dies, you choose one or more of the following. Each mode must target a different player. Obviously made for a commander. But target opponent sacrifices a creature, or target opponent discards 2 cards, or target opponent loses 5 life. If there is any world for a reanimator card, this thing is going to be the most obscene, annoying thing possible. Like, it's a 4/1, so pretty much anything you block with it, it's gonna die and trigger. But it's actually not a bad body for the cost, and those 3 abilities are all very good on this. This is going to be super annoying to play against in a fun way. So I'm not even upset if somebody's using this, but man, this card, I'm not happy it's going to be across the table from me, but I look forward to it.
Yeah, I think I feel the same way of like, my opponent's playing Aristocrats. All right, cool. Oh, they played a Vindictive Lich though?
Exactly.
Like, that's kind of cool, at least.
Right. You're like, Lich, please. Right. And so
Exactly.
in the set, as uncommon, brought down to uncommon thanks to Ultimate Masters, is Shirei.
Nice.
Shirei Shizo's Caretaker, which was
Yeah.
I went right to that card, which is whenever a creature with power 1 or less dies, and I remembered it incorrectly because it's power, not toughness. Never mind.
That's fine.
Whatever. Either way, there's combos. There's
It goes
combos
in the
galore.
same. It can go in the same deck,
Yeah,
even though it won't necessarily come back.
Right. We'll
Yeah.
still do fun, silly, crazy stuff.
Yeah.
For my number 5, this is the one. This is a card that, like, when I read it, I'm like, we've been here before. It's already $30. I can't remember what it was pre-ordering at. It was started pre-ordering like $8 or $9, and I'm like, listen, this card is going to get up to $50. Mark my words. And it's going to be reprinted at Mythic in a future set because they didn't understand that how crazy players go for anything that costs 1 million mana that is indestructible and does dumb stuff. And Darksteel Monolith checks all the boxes.
Yeah.
Every single one. I was like, are you serious? Why was this not Mythic to start with? But whatever. 8 generic mana for a rare artifact with indestructible, and once each turn you may pay 0 rather than pay the mana cost for a colorless spell you cast from your hand. We're going to get to some crazy colorless spells, but this thing is going to enable them, and this thing is going to be $1 bajillion. You heard it. I'm telling you.
I mean, I assume it's already 20 plus.
It's already 30. Yeah.
It's already, yeah. Because this is absurd. This is, anytime they print something like this, be it like one with the multiverse, is a card that I've been seeing a lot of in Brawl and in Commander.
Mm-hmm.
There's a black 6/6 in this set that I can't seem to find right now. 6/6 flyer that lets you play an enchantment for your life total once a turn. Anything that lets you play a spell for free once a turn, and by free I mean literally 0 or anything that isn't mana, is huge. And this is not going to be hard to get into play. We have so many mana rocks at 2, 3, and 4. You get all you need is a Hedron Archive and a Mind Stone and a Soul Ring, and this thing's out on turn 4. So, it's not hard to get this thing down and going quick.
Yeah, this card is absolutely bananas, and I love it when silly, crazy cards exist. Let's move here to number 4. Reuben, what's number 4?
My number 4, finally we get to talk about the medallions.
Ooh.
I put Emerald Medallion down on my list because I think that was the one, for some reason, I decided was the most important. But all of them are very good. Jet Medallion, Ruby Medallion, Sapphire Medallion, Emerald Medallion, and Pearl Medallion, I believe are the 5.
Right.
And they all cost 2 generic mana. They're all rare in this set, and they all say blank spells you cast cost 1 less to cast, where blank is the color associated with the card.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, I think they were last reprinted in a Commander set back in like 2015 or 2014, something like that. So
Commander
like it's been
2014.
forever since those have actually been available to people. So yeah, cool to see those get reprinted for sure.
Yeah,
And at Rare. They didn't have to print these at Rare. they could have made these Mythic, and we would not really have batted an eye.
Well, I mean, this is also cool because like it's one of the, it's honestly these are the only medallions in Magic. When you search for medallion, they're the only 5 cards that come back, which is kind of really cool and impressive. And showing up originally in Tempest, these things got to be like 30, 40, $50, and Commander 2014 back down a little bit, and up in Commander Anthology and back a little bit. And so in here we have them still, you know, getting more and more affordable for a time, and then they'll probably just creep right back up because what deck of these colors wouldn't want a permanent cost reduction? A lot of them would, and that's where you go. So this was my number 8, Power Dragon. Your number 9, is that right?
Yep.
And I do want to mention, just because it's been a minute since I've done a weird fun fact about Magic cards, and it's been a minute since we've talked about reprints, or not reprints, misprints on the show in any capacity. But one of the most popular and one of the most famous misprints in all of Magic history is the Tempest Sapphire Medallion. Why, you ask? Well, there is a Sapphire Medallion, and there are, you know, a lot of them. I would say a couple hundred are known, that is called the Charlie Brown Sapphire Medallion, because the printing press that was used to make Tempest previously, apparently, was used to make a Charlie Brown comic book. And on some of the Sapphire Medallions, you can barely see just a little bit of a Peanuts comic strip in the upper left portion of the Sapphire Medallion art on some of those misprints.
Very hard to find, very expensive. Power Dragon, what's number 4?
My number 4 is probably the funnest card in the set for me if you're just playing a theme deck, but that's For the Ancestors. It's 2 colorless and a green. It's an instant. You choose a creature type, look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may reveal any number of cards of the chosen type, put them into your hand, put the rest on the bottom, and it has flashback for 3 and a green. Like, this is going to be popular with the elf decks. It's going to go into the sliver decks. It's going to be all over the place. And what I like about it is it's a great card. So if you don't have, say, Heroic Intervention and your opponent's going to go sweep the board, you can be like, all right, cool. I'm going to reload my hand and we're going to be ready to go next turn. And we're going to drop some more stuff right back on the table. So like, yeah, really, really excited to see this card.
Yeah, I feel like in an alternate universe, this was a sorcery at some point, and they're like, "Why don't we just make it instant? Just
Why not?
Got to pump those numbers up.
Exactly.
Let's go. Let's make it more exciting. More exciting.
Let's make tribal decks better. Like, let's, Lead the Stampede's a sorcery, and that's a pretty good card advantage. But this is Lead the Stampede for a specific creature type. With flashback and instant speed, that's great card advantage to be able to dig out of whatever hole you've dug yourself into after a wrath has come down. Really good, as you mentioned, in any sort of tribal deck, much less if you just have changelings floating around. It's a great card.
Yeah.
And what's fun about it, too, is that you can actually not have to play as many card drawing spells if you just want to focus on more creatures. Like, this is the perfect card that creature decks want, because it's a card that gets you more cards that all happen to be creatures. So you can kind of keep your whole sub theme just going.
There you go. So let's move on here to my number 4. This is, this is another one of those weird situations where if Wizards doesn't print something again on a long enough timeline, it will be insane. Like, it will just be completely bananas. And in order to get a copy of this 26-year-old card, it will cost about $350. Costs about $120 if you want to get the Judge promo. And if you want to get one from the newest set, it's still $45 for Capture of Jingzhou? Forgive me, I'm terrible.
You're fine.
I'm Southern. So 2 blue and 3 generic mana for this Mythic sorcery that just says, take an extra turn after this one. So it's just doing the time warp again.
I hate it.
It doesn't target. That's the thing. For what it's worth, it doesn't target. Sometimes that matters. It's just 5 mana, take another turn. We know there's always that one person with the taking turns deck, and literally one of the first commander decks I ever ran into was a taking turns deck. I was like, "What are you doing?" And they're like, "Taking turns," and I'm like, "Oh."
Yep.
That would have been the last time I ever played with that person.
In Commander, that's kind of annoying. But Capture of Jingzhou as well as Temporal Manipulation were portal versions of Time Warp. And Time Warp, a 5 mana spell that says take an extra turn after this one, is also just a playable card. It's just a card that is powerful and is good. And it is hard to put a Portal 3 Kingdoms story card in a set. But they are willing to do it. And similar to Personal Tutor, similar to Imperial Recruiter in the past and other cards that have been reprinted, somewhere between Loyal Retainers and completely falling off the cliff, you'll be able to get captures at a reasonable price now, which is nice.
Yeah, and the Three Kingdoms are the Woo, the Shu, and the Wei. I didn't know that. It's interesting.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on here to number 3. Reuben, what's number 3?
So the Slivers deck has a lot of really cool, awesome new Slivers in it.
Mm-hmm.
There's no doubt about it. There's some really powerful things that some of the new Slivers are doing. I really like that Regal Sliver gives you the Monarch. I really like that Lazotep Sliver gives you Sliver armies. Like, there's a bunch of really cool stuff that the Slivers do. But in Commander, you only get one of each. Unless you play Hatchery Sliver. And now you get as many as you're willing to pay retail on. Hatchery Sliver is a generic and a green for a 2/2 with Replicate of a colorless or a generic and a green. And each Sliver spell you cast has Replicate. Its Replicate cost is equal to its mana cost. That, ladies and gentlemen, is a powerful effect. Let me paint you a pretty little picture real quick. We get a Hatchery Sliver down, and we get an Emerald Medallion down. As soon as we draw a Muscle Sliver or a Sinew Sliver, we're making 10. Like, we're making, stonks through the roof on Slivers, ladies and gentlemen. We're paying no mana for anything for the rest of our lives, much less if we have some sort of, like Wildwood Channeler or big mana effect to be able to keep paying. And keep
you have Slivers that let you tap for mana.
Right. We got Gemhide Sliver out there.
And replicating based on their cost, the fact that there's already a $13 pre-order, $50 for the extended art, y'all.
Sure.
The world knows how crazy good this card is.
One of the interesting, too, is Slivers can give, it sounds like they're going to be able to give multiple instances of some abilities on each Sliver, because it's this Slivers gain whatever. And then you have another card, so Slivers gain whatever. So you could be stacking up some really strong abilities really fast.
Like you can only gain Double Strike so many times. You can only gain Flying so many times, but you can get +1/+1 a whole lot. You can get Toxic a bunch.
Yeah,
like, you can stack some stuff.
You can stack some Cascades on there. That's
sure.
That's
that's another one.
You can give all of your creatures multiple instances of when this deals damage, gain 1 life or whatever. Like there's some stuff you can do here.
Power Dragon, what's your number 3?
Well, more Slivers, man.
Nice.
Sliver Grave Mother. This is Wooburg for a 6/6 legendary Sliver. The legend rule doesn't apply to Slivers, which will matter with, I guess, both of our cards we just talked about. But each Sliver creature card in your graveyard has Encore X, where X is its mana value. And Encore is basically, you can pay that cost, you get it into play, you make a copy for each opponent's, and then at the end of turn, they get sacrificed. Yeah, this, again, when you can get just multiple triggers off some of those abilities, or out of nowhere stack up multiple triggers of dealing damage, multiple things of, different ETBs, pumping your team out of nowhere, like you can do all kinds of stuff. And the encore of just the cost is pretty huge, because there's a lot of good cheap Slivers.
Yeah, this thing is pre-ordering for dumb numbers, is the way I would put it.
Not even a surprise.
$50+ or whatever, and the Sliver deck is like $120 or something at this point. If you want to buy one retail, because stuff like this exists. And I mean, it's rad. You know what I mean? Like, it's hard to be mad at a cool Sliver. It really is.
Oh, I'm going to lose to it more than once, I'm sure.
For sure.
Like something absurd is going to happen, and I'll just be like, yep, that's a thing.
Look, my last two are new cards, but we got to go to a classic. We got to go to a classic. We got to go to a classic that's so classic. It was in alpha, and just looking at the prices makes me feel sick to my stomach, because I had a few of these. Demonic Tutor is back, and Demonic Tutor is amazing, and this card is super sweet, and they finally said, okay, it's Mythic. We know it's Mythic. This is a $40 card all day, no matter where they print it or how they get it out there. Demonic Tutor, very simple card. Got Magic in all sorts of trouble in the 90s for a black and a generic mana. It's a sorcery that searches your library for a card. You put that card into your hand and you shuffle. It's banned in Historic and Legacy. Restricted in Vintage, but my God, you got your Commanders and your Oathbreakers, and you can Demonic Tutor all you want.
Man, sometimes I forget how many times we've reprinted Demonic Tutor. Like, I always know it's a lot, but then I'll go look at the list and it's like 2 or 3 more than I remember. And it's still a $40 card.
I also want to point out on the alternate art, full art version of this card, sometimes a flavor text will just come at you and punch you in the mouth. And I just love the flavor text of, is the knowledge really forbidden because it's dangerous to you, or perhaps because it is dangerous to those who seek to control you? Ooh. Oh boy. I love that. That's a spicy meatball.
That's depth right there.
Yeah.
I love it. Let's move on here to number 2. Reuben, what's your number 2?
My number 2 is a reprint that I think was one of the least surprising reprints that they could have put in Commander Masters. When they said we're getting Commander Masters, I think people were like, oh, good. Finally, they have somewhere to put Fierce Guardianship. Right?
Yeah.
Like, that's kind of what if you were to put betting odds on cards that were to be in this set, you probably couldn't have had worse odds than betting on Fierce Guardianship to be in the set. It had to be in this set.
Yeah, there's nowhere else for it to be.
Right. Originally printed in Commander 2020. It is 2 generic and a blue for an instant that says counter target creature spell. But if you control a commander, you may cast this spell without paying its mana cost. It's gone down in price from what it used to be, which is good.
Which is
all the way down to $34.
I think you said counter target. It's counter target non-creature spell.
Non-creature spell. I thought I said that.
You might have just came out a little fast, but either way,
okay.
I mean, yeah, you're stopping their mana, their Wrath of Gods for free, their giant spells for free, their mana rocks for free, like just anything that's going to make their giant enchantments, right, or whatever. This just stops all the things. This is as close as you're going to find as a Force of Will for Commander. It was stupid money, $50+ before it's reprinted, still 34 or so with a. I mean, again, pre-order prices, but $40 extended art, and it's gorgeous. And this is honestly, one of the cards you needed in the set.
That whole cycle of free if you have your commander, like, just needed a reprint. So it's really cool to see those show up here.
Yeah.
Even the ones that are considered not as good as Fierce Guardianship or the red one, which I think is a redirect.
Yeah.
I play Flawless Maneuver, the white one, in my Arcades deck, and it's spectacular. Like, all of them are great.
The green one, I think, was the worst one, right? I think it's prevent.
What does that do?
Prevent
damage?
Prevent damage of some sort. I can't.
That still lets you tap out. That still lets you do something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, it lets you do a thing, which is neat. But yeah, and again, for free. You can't argue with free.
Oh, free.
Power Dragon. What you got for number 2?
Number 2 is a card I've always hated in Magic over the years, but people seem to love it, and that's Grave Pact. It's colorless and 3 black for an enchantment. Whenever a creature you control dies, each other player sacrifices a creature. And, we're talking about the Aristocrats type decks, the tokens decks. Like, this is just such a pain. Like, to the point where you get stuck between a rock and a hard place if you even want to block somebody's token or just, like, take some damage. Like, it's a damn good card. It was getting up to, at one point, like $45 or something. So it's kind of cool to see this one get reprinted too. And I think people are going to love opening this card for sure.
Yeah, this is a card that, look, it was a weirdo card, like from the very start. This was a Stronghold card. They got reprinted in 8th edition. No one knew why. 9th and 10th edition, nobody knew why. And then they just stopped reprinting it. And they're like, we're not going to reprint that card for many, many years. And then when they did, it was rare, but it was never rare priced. And they finally said, okay, fine, it's Mythic. And they made it Mythic. And it's a $25-something Mythic. So,
yeah.
And it always will be.
This is one of the card effects that when I see it, I'm like, crap. Like, how do I...
Exactly.
I can't do anything.
Yeah.
It's like, I need to deal with this right now.
Like, my opponent has attacked me with a decayed zombie.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
A Bastion of Remembrance and a Blood Artist in play, and it's like, you're not giving me a choice of anything to do here.
So, for my number 2, when you want to go big, you want to go real big. And... God bless whoever came up with this one. This is absolutely incredible. This is also like a $30 pre-order ridiculousness, $15 for the non-special version, but it doesn't matter because there's just something really cool and honestly really special. And Wizards, I actually think they should definitely latch onto this, which is it should be a big deal to be a spell named after a set. Ideally, it might be in the same set. It doesn't have to be. But by God, Rise of the Eldrazi is a Rise of the Eldrazi.
Yeah, it is.
Holy smack. It is 3 colorless mana. That is the Wingdings. 3 colorless, 9 generic. So 12 mana for a rare sorcery that cannot be countered. We're already talking about Vintage Legacy. When I play a big free spell, this is going to be the one. It copies the first abilities, or at least the main abilities, from all the original Eldrazi. So you destroy target permanent, target player draws 4 cards, and you take an extra turn after this one, and you exile Rise of the Eldrazi. And then you take a little lap, and you do a little dance because you just kicked everybody's ass. I don't know what to tell you. This thing's insane.
Yeah. This was, in fact, my number 9.
Nice.
Very cool. I mean, anytime you name a card, like anytime a set is named after a card, that's cool.
Yeah.
But every time a card is named after a set, that means a little something different, right? Like we
Feels
got
like
Mirrored
it.
and Besieged at one point.
Mm-hmm.
And that felt really special.
Yeah.
Rise of the Eldrazi, you really needed it to be big and brash and huge, and this delivers.
Yeah, I like the card. I mean, and again, you know, kind of invoking the other Eldrazi is really cool. Just really nice flavor. I hate that it's taken extra turn, but like whatever. Like the card's super sweet. It really is. The cool part is it does at least exile itself. So I'll give it that.
Itself, which is nice.
I will let it exile itself. The fact that it can be copied is a little annoying,
Sure.
but it does cost 12. It exiles itself. We're okay.
I love big stupid stuff, and we're going to get even bigger and dumber. With my number 1, let's go ahead and just bust out my number 1. This card it checks every box for Timmy's. I'm a Timmy Spike, all right? I like to feel things. I like to win stuff. And oh my God, when you crank all of the dials to 11 on the stupid Eldrazi meter, Flayer of Loyalty shows up. This card is insane. Also another one that they're talking about reanimated in Legacies and Moderns and whatnot. 2 colorless mana and 8 generic mana. So for your 10 mana, you get a 10/10. That's a rare Eldrazi. And when you cast this spell, gain control of target creature until end of turn. Untap that creature. Until end of turn, it has base power and toughness 10/10 and gains Trample, Annihilator 2, and Haste. And it also has Trample, and it also has Annihilator 2, which means whenever this creature attacks, defending player sacrifices 2 permanents. This thing is big, scary, huge, awesome, gigantic. From the top rope, this is magic. This is just all I need in a magic card right here.
This is the most Evan Irwin magic card.
It is very
That's going to devastate people. Like, you're going to like, okay, this thing happened. You've got like 1 or 2 creatures. It's like, yeah, if you don't mind, I'm going to borrow that. And it's a 10/10, and then it's going to come at you. And you've got to sacrifice 2 things just because.
Oh, it's
Okay, now you can have it back. Right.
This is the kind of card that you save until after the first or the second Wrath of a Commander game. And you're just like, all right, now the board is clear. Everyone has played their one other creature. Now I'll take the thing that's out and get to.
And not only that, you can take one player's creature to go after another player in the right scenarios. There might even be bigger benefits to that.
For sure.
I mean, the chaos this card is going to cause is just beautiful and amazing, and I love it. It is my number 1 card. Not even close. Reuben, what is your number 1 card?
My number 1 card is I'm not going to say beloved character. It is a character from the history of Magic. It is a character steeped in lore, very important to the history of Magic, but is kind of a meme. Kind of a meme lord, in fact, like kind of knows it's a meme, but is also very important to the history of the game, and that is Commodore Guff. Commodore Guff is my number 1. This is a character that I've known since I was playing Wild Research in Standard, and he had his little like jeweler's loop looking at stuff, and now we finally have him on a Magic card. Commodore Guff is a generic, a blue, a red, and a white for a legendary planeswalker Guff. With 5 loyalty, and Commodore Guff can be your commander. And at the beginning of your end step, put a loyalty counter on another target planeswalker you control. He has 2 other abilities, 2 loyalty abilities. +1, make a 1/1 red wizard creature token with tap, add a red, spend this mana only to cast a planeswalker spell. Or -3, you draw X cards and Commodore Guff deals X damage to each opponent, where X is the number of planeswalkers you control. which is very cool as well. So you can do some interesting things with Commodore Guff, mostly playing a 3-mana Planeswalker on 3, immediately playing Commodore Guff and drawing 2 cards and dealing 2 damage to every opponent. Like, that's perfectly reasonable. Or if you don't have, that's if you have no mana ramp, if you have no Soul Ring or anything like that. If you don't have any mana ramp or any Soul Ring, you can also +1 and then the next turn play a Chandra, right? Or some crazy 6-mana Planeswalker. The ability to buff your other Planeswalkers at your end step also really helps get to the ultimate abilities of all of your other Planeswalkers. The wizard not only helps you power out Planeswalkers, but also ramps you to them, and being able to recoup card advantage is also really important. So love everything about how they made this card.
Yeah, and I think it fits the cool sort of like sub theme they kind of planted seeds for throughout the set of caring about having more Planeswalkers. So if you want to do the big Super Friends deck or whatever, it's like, hey, here's a little nod. Like we've been putting some stuff there. Here's some things that specifically are calling out you having a bunch of Planeswalkers. So that's kind of cool too.
Yeah, it's been a long, strange journey, but a really satisfying one to be there at the beginning when Lorwyn's first Planeswalkers came out and the Super Friends deck came out of nowhere, right? And everyone's like, you could just put them all in a deck and just have them be your threats? Like, what? Like, that was a whole... People are blowing minds out back then. And so this is kind of the culmination of all of that, of like, hey, we can give you something that puts them all together and makes them scary.
Yeah, back
and cool
when
and fun.
every land could practically produce 5 colors, which was crazy.
And it's important. I mean, this is such an important character to the lore of Magic. To be such a joke, like the name Commodore Guff sounds like a joke, right? But that's because a lot of those old characters kind of sound goofy, like Garth One Eye.
Yeah,
like,
that sounds ridiculous.
You know, but Commodore Guff was like the leader of the Proto Gatewatch, the 9 Titans that helped defeat the Phyrexians during the invasion block. Mm-hmm. Commodore Guff was the guy, I think, that put them together with Urza. Like, he's no joke. He's like...
He was their Nick Fury.
Yeah, he was their Nick Fury. He was their OG.
Nice.
He sat in a library all day, but was like, I want these specific Planeswalkers to help fight the Phyrexians.
There you go. All right. So, Power Dragon, what is your number 1?
Mine is honestly one of my favorite cards in Commander, and that's the Great Hinge. 7 colorless, green, legendary artifact. It gets cheaper if you have big creatures out, which is awesome. So it gets cost reduced to the greatest power of creatures you control. You can tap it, add 2 mana, gain 2 life, and then when a non-token creature comes into play, you get a +1/+1 counter on it, and you get to draw a card. This card is in pretty much every green deck that has creatures, and it's super good every time. And it's only 4 years old, came out in like 2019, and still was hitting that $70 mark, and we've gotten a few box topper versions or whatever, but this is the first time I've had it reprinted in actual sets. And hopefully that helps people because this is a highly sought after card. So it wasn't a surprise to see this reprinted in the set. I was almost going to be surprised if it wasn't in there, to be honest.
Fire design, everybody.
Yeah.
Fire.
I mean, this card's great. This card's also fun, though.
Card's
yeah,
fun
it is.
and great and silly and powerful, and
yeah,
it does everything. It just does.
And it fits so many different decks. I think that's the other thing too.
I've been playing a lot of Multani Yavimaya's Avatar Brawl, and that deck has a lot of bad creatures in it. And there's nothing quite like playing, a 10/10. Playing this for 2 mana and then being like, oh, I kind of want the bad creatures instead of the good creatures, because the bad creatures cost 2. Right, yep. So now I get to draw my deck. The Great Henge, by the way, also tells a very important part of the story of the original Throne of Eldraine block, where Will and Rowan went looking for their father in the woods, and they went into the woods. This is sort of the conclusion of Act 1 moment, where they went through the Great Henge, which I think is really interesting.
There you go. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was our top 10 Commander Masters cards. You'll see them on screen right now for your review. Take a look at my list, Power Dragon's list, Reuben's top 10. And we want to hear from you about what card we didn't talk about. And we'll select our favorite to win $50 worth of anything at CoolStuffInc.com. But before we go, I want to thank my co-host. Thank you, Power Dragon.
Hey, good to be here, like always.
Thank you, Reuben.
Great set, and I'm looking forward to the honorable mentions.
I think this set really was fantastic. It's expensive, but it really, really was good. Let's move on here to our final slide. I want to thank our sponsor, CoolStuffInc.com, our co-sponsor, ManaTraders.com, my co-host, Power Dragon, and Reuben Bressler. You guys for watching and listening. I hope you support us at Patreon.com/MagicMikes. Please follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe to everything social that tells people we exist. Catch us online at Twitch.tv at Magic Mikes, on Twitter at Magic Mikes Cast, our Magic Mike subreddit, and like the Magic Mikes page on Facebook. Or join us here next week, same time, same place, for another episode of Magic Mikes. Good night, everybody.